Show me proof, or get out. The branch manager's voice cut through the quiet marble lobby like a knife. Every head turned. Customers froze. A man in a plain white t-shirt and worn jeans stood at the counter, holding out his ID and bank card. His jaw didn't tighten. His shoulders didn't flinch. But something in his eyes shifted, a fire flickering behind calm restraint. What no one in that Seattle bank knew was this. In 7 minutes, every employee inside would lose their job, because the man they were mocking wasn't just another customer. He was the one who signed their paychecks. The setup: a quiet morning, a shocking clash. It was 10 a.m. on a Thursday at the Apex Bank branch on 1425th Avenue, the kind of day when people rushed in for deposits, wire transfers, routine errands. No one expected a scene, but the collision of arrogance, bias, and raw power was about to unfold right there in front of them. The man at the counter was Michael, 45. By his clothes, you'd think he was a construction worker on lunch break. What they couldn't see was the truth. Michael was the billionaire CEO of Apex Financial Group, the very corporation that owned the building they were standing in. Net worth: over $15 billion. That morning, though, Michael didn't arrive in a tailored suit or polished shoes. No entourage, no security, just himself. Why? Because for weeks complaints had been flooding into his office. Anonymous posts on Reddit, stories whispered across social media. Minority customers being questioned, insulted, even accused of fraud at this very branch. Michael wasn't the kind of man to sit behind a desk and order an investigation. He believed in seeing injustice with his own eyes. And now injustice was staring him down. The clash. "I need to make a withdrawal," Michael said evenly, sliding his card across the counter. 1 million. Wire transfer? Silence swallowed the room. Karen, the 50-year-old branch manager, arched an eyebrow. Her lips twisted into a smirk. "A million?" she repeated, her eyes scanning him from head to toe. "In that outfit?" Her voice wasn't curious. It was dripping with contempt. Michael simply nodded. "Yes, from my Apex account." That's when Charles Hole, a teller barely into his 30s, chimed in over the intercom so loudly the whole lobby could hear. "Sir, we'll need to re-verify your identity. We've had scammers dressed like that before." Snickers rippled through the line. Somewhere in the back, someone laughed. Michael didn't flinch. "My ID is valid, so is my account." But Charles never looked at the computer screen. "Then prove it. Show us your funds," he shot back smugly. "And maybe try a better story." Karen folded her arms. "Unless," she added, "you're just here to cause trouble." Then came the breaking point. Teller Nancy, 28, yanked Michael's card, shoved it into her drawer, and snapped the lock shut. "This card looks suspicious," she said coldly. "Honestly? You probably stole it. You need to leave." The words hit the room like a slap. A woman near the entrance gasped. A man whispered under his breath, "Did she really just say that?" And then a phone lifted. Witnesses step in. From the back of the lobby, Ashley, 29, a marketing consultant and longtime customer, had heard enough. She pressed record. "This is racism at Apex Bank," she said, loud and deliberate. "And it's going online." With one tap, the video was posted to X. No hashtags, no captions, just raw truth. Behind her, Anthony, 33, a local journalist, raised his phone too. "Get his name," Ashley urged him. "We're documenting everything." Meanwhile, at the counter, Sandra, 25, a young teller who had endured Karen's iron-fisted management for 2 years, felt her stomach twist. "He has every right to be here," Sandra said softly, voice shaking. Karen's glare shot across the counter. "You're not paid to argue." But Sandra didn't back down. "I am paid to follow policy, and you're breaking it." The tension was thick enough to choke on. Nancy sneered, her voice sharp. "You don't know who this guy is. He's trying to scam us." What no one knew, not Nancy, not Karen, not Charles, was that the man they were humiliating wasn't a fraud at all. He was their boss, and the cameras were already rolling. Michael turned his gaze first to Nancy, then to Karen, then to the locked drawer where his card now sat like evidence of a crime. His voice was low, but it carried. "You're not ruining me," he said quietly. "You're ruining Apex. This isn't about who I am. It's about who you are." Flashback. The first wound. 2 decades earlier, a younger Michael walked into a small Texas bank. 25, just out of grad school, he was ready to withdraw money for his first investment property. Jeans, a button-up shirt, and an eager smile. But the teller didn't see a rising entrepreneur. They saw only a young black man. A risk. A thug. His funds were placed under investigation. The teller said he'd need a lawyer and a suit before they'd even consider taking him seriously. That sting never left. It burned deep, planting the seed that grew into Apex Financial Group, a company Michael swore would stand for dignity, fairness, and equality. A place where no one would be shamed for the color of their skin or the clothes on their back. And now, in his own empire, he was facing the same poison he thought he'd erased. Escalation. Back in Seattle, Karen pressed the button beneath her desk. A silent escalation note. Possible fraud. Monitor. She turned to Charles. "If he doesn't leave, call it in." Charles's voice boomed across the marble lobby. "Final warning, sir. Leave now or we escalate to law enforcement." Michael didn't budge. Instead, he pulled out his phone, not to record, but to dial. "Kimberly," he said when his assistant answered, his voice calm as ice. "Activate the internal system." On the other end, "It's live. We're monitoring everything. Say the word." Michael paused. "Not yet." At the counter, Sandra stepped forward again, her hands trembling but her voice steady. "You locked his card without cause. That's a violation, Nancy. You could lose your job." Nancy rolled her eyes. "I'm not worried." Karen's patience cracked. "Enough. You're embarrassing yourself, Sandra." Anthony, the journalist still recording, cut in. "No, she's protecting a customer, and you're violating your own code of conduct." Whispers spread like wildfire. One man muttered, "Is this how you treat all black men in jeans?" Karen didn't blink. "We treat suspicious behavior the same, no matter the color." But the crowd wasn't buying it anymore. The name Michael's face was calm, but his fist curled slightly at his side. His voice was low, steady, unshakable. "You'll regret this, Karen. All of you will." And then came the crack in the wall. Anthony leaned closer to the counter, tugging the drawer open just enough before Nancy slammed it shut. But it was too late. He had seen the name. Reading it aloud, his voice carried across the lobby. "Michael, this card says Michael." A pause. A gasp. Someone whispered, "Wait. That Michael?" Michael stood taller, his presence suddenly electric. He didn't confirm it, he didn't deny it, but the weight of his name began to shift the room. Karen felt it too. Her eyes flickered, recognition, fear, or maybe both, before she snapped the mask of authority back on. "Lock the drawer," she hissed to Nancy. "Don't let anyone near that card." Nancy pressed her hand flat on the drawer as if guarding state secrets. "This card's suspicious," she repeated, her voice sharp and defensive. "And so is he. We told him to leave. That's final." Her voice rose, slicing through the tense silence. "You heard me, sir. Leave now." The word "sir" dripped with sarcasm. Crossing the line. Charles moved fast this time. He stepped out from behind the counter, his hand clamping hard around Michael's elbow. His jaw tightened. "Let's not make this harder than it has to be," he muttered through clenched teeth. "This isn't a place for you to act out. Time to go." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some customers backed away, bracing for a fight. Others stepped closer, phones raised. "He's a client," one man shouted. "You can't put your hands on him." But Charles, bolstered by Karen's silent nod, kept his grip firm. "You don't belong here," Nancy hissed under her breath, just loud enough for Michael to hear. That was it. The final spark. Michael's voice thundered, calm but commanding, shaking the marble air. "Let go of me!" Sandra stepped forward, her body wedged between Michael and Charles's grip. "You can't touch him," she cried, her voice breaking with fury. "His account is valid. You haven't even looked at the screen. Charles's face reddened. To be challenged by a junior teller and in front of customers stung his pride like a slap. "This isn't your call, Sandra," Karen barked. "He's a fraud. You'll see soon enough." The breaking point. Then a voice erupted from across the lobby. "This is injustice!" Anthony shouted, now live streaming straight to Reddit. His words sliced through the air. "They're physically removing a customer with no evidence. This is racism, live at Apex Bank." The livestream captured it all, the gasps, the overlapping protests, the squeak of shoes on marble as customers began stepping in, blocking Charles's path. Ashley's voice rang out next. "The whole country's going to see this." From near the doors, a woman in a blue dress muttered, almost to herself, "This is exactly what happened to my brother." The temperature of the room had changed. What began as humiliation in a polished lobby was now bleeding out through 1,000 screens. Anger was no longer trapped between glass partitions. It was public, and it was growing. Flashback. The first doubt. Michael's mind flicked backward again, this time to age 15. He had walked into a small branch in Texas, clutching his grandmother's savings bond. The teller looked at his dark skin, his oversized hoodie, and asked if he was running an errand for someone. When Michael said no, that the bond was his grandmother's and her name was right there on the certificate, the teller didn't believe him. They called a manager, forced his elderly grandmother to come in herself before they'd cash it. That humiliation branded itself into his memory, to be questioned, doubted, treated as illegitimate, because of appearance alone. Now, decades later, that same bitter flavor was being shoved down his throat, this time in a bank he owned. The pushback. "I came to withdraw my money," Michael said firmly. "You've accused me of theft, taken my card, and put hands on me. This will not go unanswered." Karen rolled her eyes. "Oh, please, you're a threat. We're following protocol." "Protocol?" Sandra shot back, her voice shaking but loud. "No, you're abusing power." Karen leaned in, lowering her voice to a venomous whisper meant only for Sandra. "I warned you once. Keep this up and you're next." But something broke in Sandra's face. She straightened, her fear hardening into defiance. "I've seen you do this before," she said aloud. "Last year, a black customer asked to meet with a loan officer. You made him wait an hour, then denied him without ever opening his file." Karen flinched, just for a heartbeat. Ashley seized it. "Wait, you've had complaints before?" Sandra nodded, and she buried them. The crowd stirred like a hive cracked open. "You people think you can do anything behind a title," an older man shouted. "My dad's account was frozen here last month without cause," a woman added. Anthony, still streaming, angled the camera toward his own face. "For anyone watching, this isn't isolated. This is systemic. And this branch is a symptom." Michael speaks. Michael turned, not to Karen, not to Charles, but to the people. His voice carried the weight of lived experience. "They think they're untouchable," he said. "They think appearance equals legitimacy. They've mistaken arrogance for authority." In his pocket, Kimberly's voice buzzed softly through his phone. "Internal system is live. We're recording everything. Audio, testimony, full authorization granted." Michael didn't respond aloud. He simply locked his eyes on Nancy. "Return my card." Nancy froze. "Return it," he repeated, this time like steel. "You've made your point. You've crossed every line." Nancy shook her head defiantly. "We're not done here." Ashley jabbed a finger toward her. "You should be. You're being recorded." Anthony added, "Reddit's watching. Thousands are tuned in. You're going viral." Karen's composure cracked. Panic flickered across her face before she slammed the mask back on. "Everyone, put your phones away," she barked. But no one moved. No one obeyed. Instead, the crowd pressed forward. "You owe him an apology," one woman said. "Where's corporate?" another man demanded. Karen lifted her chin. "We are corporate." Michael smiled faintly. "Not for long." Even Charles faltered now, still gripping Michael's arm, but his confidence waning. "This is going too far," he muttered. "We can't keep pushing this." But Karen ignored him. Her voice rose once more, clinging to authority. "This man is not who he says he is." And that was when the first twist landed. Sandra's hands trembled as she pulled up the system on her side screen. Her voice cracked, but she forced it louder, forcing the truth into the room. "I looked him up," she declared. "His account is real, and it's massive. He's not just a client. He's a top-tier executive account holder." The lobby fell into a stunned silence. Karen's jaw slackened. Charles stared down at the marble floor. Nancy's face drained pale. Ashley gasped breathless. "Oh my God." And Michael, still holding his phone in his hand, spoke again. Steady, measured, unshaken. "You're going to regret this. Not because of who I am, but because of who you chose to be. The question to you." Now pause. Imagine you were standing there. You hear Michael accused of fraud. You see him shoved toward the door, stripped of dignity, treated as if his very presence is a crime. What would you have done? Would you have spoken up? Would you have stood between him and the exit? That is not a rhetorical question. That's the one you must answer. The bluff security code red. Karen barked suddenly, her voice snapping across the room like a whip. There was no security, no red code. It was a bluff, her last desperate play. "Remove him now," she screamed, eyes locking on Charles. Charles hesitated, his shoulders sagging with doubt. But still, he obeyed. He lunged forward and shoved Michael hard in the chest, driving him backward toward the glass doors. "He's a fraud!" Nancy bellowed through the intercom, her voice booming across the branch like a public announcement. "This man is impersonating a client. Do not assist him." Customers froze, horrified. Near the teller line, an elderly woman clutched her purse. "What is happening here?" she whispered. Michael stumbled back one step, then steadied himself. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't lash out. Instead, he lifted his eyes toward the intercom speaker and let out a long, slow exhale, as if holding back the volcano inside him. "Don't do this," Sandra pleaded, planting herself in front of Michael. "You've gone too far. That announcement was slander." But Karen was past reason, her voice rising to a fever pitch. "I run this branch, not some man off the street pretending he owns an account. We don't serve people like him." The words struck like dynamite. The fuse ignites. "That's enough!" Ashley shouted, rage vibrating in her voice. Her phone trembled in her hands as she kept recording. "You just told the whole room he doesn't belong. On what grounds? His skin? His clothes?" Anthony swung his live stream across the lobby. "This is a banking hate crime, happening live in downtown Seattle. Share this. Save this." The crowd roared with murmurs of anger. A young Latino man stepped forward. "I've been treated the same way at this bank. This is no accident." Another customer shook her head in disgust. "Nah, you're confrontational," she shot back at Karen. "You're the one shouting through a microphone while humiliating a grown man in front of everyone. We see it." The electricity in the air shifted. For the first time, the branch was no longer under Karen's control. It belonged to the people. Flashback. The code. Beneath the surface. Michael's mind snapped back again. Age 30. Fresh from closing a multi-million-dollar funding deal. This time, he was dressed sharply, his speech confident, every paper signed in his name. Still, the bank manager asked him, not once, not twice, but 3 times, if he was authorized to use the account. "I just need to verify you're not fronting for someone," the manager had said. That coded language clung to Michael for years. The unspoken suggestion, you couldn't possibly be the one in charge. You must be a proxy, a face, a stand-in. That same doubt echoed now, not whispered in a manager's office, but blasted across a loudspeaker for a lobby full of witnesses. The voice shifts back in the present. Michael's restraint finally cracked. His voice was no longer calm. It was firm, resonant, undeniable. "You've slandered my name," he said, his tone heavy as stone. "You've violated—" and the room held its breath. The story was about to explode. You've violated banking protocol, Michael said, his voice no longer calm but cutting. You took my card, denied me service, and humiliated me in front of this entire lobby. Charles's grip faltered. His hand slipped away as uncertainty clouded his face. I just followed orders, he stammered. You put your hands on me, Michael replied evenly. You physically shoved a client. Sandra stepped to Michael's side, trembling but fierce. I've already submitted an internal ethics report, she told Karen, her voice carrying to the crowd. They'll receive it today, and this time it won't be buried. Karen's laugh was sharp, brittle. Your career's over the moment this ends. You're siding with a scammer. Sandra turned, her eyes blazing. He's not a scammer. He's a client. And even if he weren't, no one deserves to be treated this way. Ashley raised her camera higher. She's right. This is systemic abuse, and it ends now. The crowd stands. Then something remarkable happened. The line inside Apex Bank wasn't at the teller windows anymore. It was forming between Michael and the exit. 5 customers stepped forward. Ashley, Anthony, and 3 others, standing shoulder to shoulder. No one is dragging this man out, one said, arms crossed like a wall. If he leaves, we all leave, another declared. A woman in heels lifted her phone, her voice icy. I'm contacting the State Banking Commission right now. For the first time, Michael wasn't standing alone. The crowd itself had become his shield. The warning. You have one last chance, Michael told Karen, his voice steady as stone. Apologize. Admit you were wrong. Walk this back. Karen folded her arms, venom dripping from her words. I'd rather be fired than apologize to someone who thought he could manipulate us. Michael shook his head slowly. His gaze swept across Karen, Nancy, Charles, and finally rested on Sandra. You're not the only ones recording, he said. You're being logged, documented, witnessed, and this branch is under review at the highest level. Karen scoffed. By who? Corporate isn't watching this. The twist. That's when Ashley turned her camera directly on Michael. Her voice shook with curiosity and urgency. Sir, who are you? The lobby went still. For a moment, Michael didn't answer. The silence dragged heavy as iron. Then he spoke. You'll find out very soon. Sandra's breath caught, her suspicion confirmed. This wasn't just a client. Karen's eyes narrowed. What's your name? She demanded. Michael didn't blink. He nodded toward Anthony. You already heard it. You just didn't listen. The crowd rippled with shock. He's Michael, someone whispered. The CEO, another gasped. Ashley nearly dropped her phone. No, that can't be. But Anthony, still streaming live, said it loud enough for the internet to hear. Michael, the owner of Apex Bank. The silence that followed was seismic. Karen's jaw sagged. Charles stumbled backward as if burned. Nancy fumbled at the drawer for the key with shaking hands. This is a setup, she whispered. Sandra exhaled sharply, tears springing to her eyes. Not of fear, but of vindication. Ashley turned her camera on the stunned crowd. You're watching the moment a bank branch tried to expel its own owner because he didn't look like he belonged. The grief. Michael scanned the room, his gaze heavy with something deeper than triumph. Grief. This wasn't supposed to happen again, he said softly. Not here. Not in my bank. Then his voice reached past the walls, out through Ashley's live stream, straight to the audience watching on their screens. What would you have done? He asked. If you stood in this branch while they tried to erase me, would you have stayed silent, or would you have stood between me and the door? Silence helps no one. The lobby was electric now, tense, volatile, seconds away from combustion. Karen's face cracked with desperation. Her authority was slipping, and she could feel it. This is an impersonation scheme, she shrieked, her voice thin and frantic. He's not who he says he is. Do not listen to this man. She snapped her gaze toward Charles, jerking her chin. Move him, now. Charles froze, torn between loyalty and fear. Move him! Karen screamed again, louder, the last shards of her power breaking. And this time, Charles obeyed. His jaw clenched, his fists tightened, and with sudden violence he drove his forearm into Michael's chest, shoving him back toward the entrance. The entire room gasped. Shouts erupted across the lobby, chairs scraping as people rose to their feet. Phones shot into the air like torches. "Hands off him!" a man barked from near the front counter. But it was too late. Michael had already been shoved hard against the glass door, his chest tightening from the impact. Sandra darted forward, arms wide, planting herself between Michael and Charles. "Stop!" she cried, her voice cracking under the weight of anger. "That's your CEO." The branch froze. Charles's hand dropped to his side. Nancy stiffened like a statue, color draining from her cheeks. Karen's lips barely moved as she whispered, "What did you just say?" Sandra turned slowly, her voice steady now. "You heard me. That man is Michael, the owner of Apex Bank, the same person whose card you locked away as if it were stolen, the man you tried to shove out of his own branch." The crowd erupts. Ashley's phone shook as she recorded, the tremor no longer hers but the energy pulsing through the room. Anthony's voice spilled into the live stream. "It's true, she said it out loud. That's him." And then chaos broke loose. "He's the CEO," someone shouted. "You just attacked your own boss," yelled another. A woman stepped forward, raising her phone like a shield between Michael and Charles. "Try it again, and you'll answer to all of us." Two more customers joined her, standing shoulder to shoulder. A human barricade was forming, not abstract, but solid. A wall of ordinary people who refused to watch in silence. Karen tried to claw back control, her voice shrill. "Everyone calm down. You're disrupting operations." But her words were cut short. The turning tide. Through Michael's open call, Kimberly's voice rang out like a bell. "Michael, the system is active. Every second is logged, every word captured. The board has authorized you to act." Michael didn't answer right away. His eyes moved slowly across the crowd. Ashley, Anthony, Sandra, the customers forming a line of defense. What he saw in their faces wasn't pity. It was fury. This was no longer just his battle. It had become something larger. A moment of truth. Michael stepped away from the door, closing the distance toward Karen. His voice was quiet, but its force filled every corner. "You shoved me once, then again. Each time you could have de-escalated. Instead, you humiliated me publicly. You twisted procedure into a weapon. You turned race into a threat. And for that, you will answer." Karen staggered as though slapped. "This is ridiculous," she spat. "You'd never walk in dressed like that. You're making this up." Michael leaned forward, his voice dropping. "I wasn't acting. I came here as a customer, because I wanted to believe this branch had changed. It hasn't. You're the same as always, just bolder now because you thought you were safe." The excuses. He shifted his gaze to Charles, who had already retreated a few steps. "You put your hands on me twice without checking a single fact." Charles opened his mouth, but nothing came. He looked helplessly at Nancy. She lowered her head, refusing to meet his eyes. "This is serious," she mumbled. "We didn't realize—" Michael's reply rose like a verdict. "That's the line every time, isn't it? We didn't realize. You didn't know I was a CEO. You didn't know I had resources. You didn't know I belonged here." His voice climbed higher, carrying weight instead of rage. "But the truth is, you didn't care. What you saw was a black man who, in your eyes, didn't belong. That was enough." Ashley called out, her tone breaking. "That's what makes this so painful." Anthony added for the live stream, "Why should it take being a billionaire to be treated like a human being?" The room vibrated with agreement. The board's verdict. Karen wiped sweat from her forehead, her composure collapsing. "You can't just fire us," she snapped, but her voice had lost its bite. "There are rules, procedures." Michael lifted his phone again. "Donald, join us." Within seconds, another voice echoed through the speaker. Donald, Apex board member. Calm. Certain. "Michael," he said, "the board is watching. You have full authority. Act as you see fit. The vote is unanimous." Karen blinked rapidly, her face drained of confidence. Her power, once absolute in that marble lobby, was evaporating in real time. And the crowd, phones raised, voices buzzing with outrage, waited to see what Michael would do next. Karen's voice shook as she spat. "What does that mean?" Michael didn't bother answering her. Instead, he turned toward Sandra, his expression softening for the first time all morning. "You showed courage today," he told her. "Principle. That's the kind of leadership this bank deserves." Then his tone hardened as he lifted his phone. "Kimberly," he said into the line, "initiate immediate termination for Apex Seattle branch staff. Karen, Charles, Nancy." Kimberly's reply came sharp and certain through the speaker. "Confirmed. Accounts suspended. Security access revoked. HR notified." The room gasped as though the oxygen had been sucked out of it. Nancy stumbled back against the counter, her hands trembling. "You can't do this," she shrieked. "This is madness." "No," Sandra countered, stepping forward with her chin high. "It's called accountability. The hidden policy." And then the aftershock hit. Charles, pale and visibly shaking, looked directly at Michael. His voice cracked. "There's something you don't know. Karen gave us instructions. A list." The room went silent again, every eye fixed on him. "She told us to stall certain people," Charles continued, his words spilling out now. "Customers who didn't look right. Said the bank didn't need their business. If they pushed back, we were supposed to delay, then escalate." Karen's face drained of color. "He's lying," she screamed, desperation clawing through her words. "He's trying to drag me down with him." But Charles's voice steadied. "It's the truth, every word. She built discrimination into our playbook." Ashley gasped audibly. "A manual for bias?" Anthony's livestream caught his own shaking words. "This isn't just a bad day. This is systemic." Michael stepped closer, his gaze burning. "Thank you, Charles. Your honesty may save you from a courtroom, but you're still finished here." Karen's voice tore through the silence. "This isn't fair. You can't believe him." But the lobby already had. "You poisoned this place," a man near the door shouted. "She's being exposed in real time," another woman added. "This is justice unfolding." The atmosphere shifts. Kimberly's voice broke in again, clinical and steady. "Michael, live stream footage has gone viral. National media is sharing Ashley's video." All eyes turned back to Michael. He didn't look smug. He looked weary, but unyielding. "This isn't revenge," he told the room, his voice resonating off the marble. "This is principle. What happened to me today must never happen to anyone, here or anywhere. Not as long as I sit in this chair." A ripple of applause began, hesitant at first, then steady. Not explosive, but respectful, earned. Michael turned to the tellers who had stayed silent, his gaze piercing. "If you've kept quiet until now, silence won't shield you anymore. Choose your side, because change begins here." The lobby was no longer a bank. It had transformed into a tribunal, and the crowd was both witness and jury. The final reveal. Karen was still stammering protest when Michael stepped fully into the center of the branch. His plain white t-shirt, moments ago a mark of suspicion, now seemed sharper than the most expensive suit. He didn't need a microphone. His voice alone commanded the room. "My name," he said, calm and unshakable, "is Michael, Chief Executive Officer of Apex Financial Group, 35% shareholder, owner of this building, this branch, and that desk you're hiding behind, Karen." The silence was suffocating. A pen dropped at a teller station, and the clatter echoed like a gavel. Customers stared in shock. Nancy's breath caught in her throat. Charles's jaw hung open. Karen's knees seemed to buckle. This is a trick," she stammered. "You came here to deceive us. You can't—" Michael raised his hand, not in anger, but to cut off one more excuse. "I walked in the way every customer walks in. Alone. Ordinary clothes, hoping for respect. What I received was suspicion, mockery, and violence. And that ends today." He held up his phone, still connected to Kimberly. "Proceed." Kimberly's reply was precise, each word like a hammer striking stone. Karen, branch manager. Charles, teller. Nancy, teller. Terminations authorized under CEO Emergency Powers, Section 9C. All credentials disabled effective immediately. The verdict had been delivered. HR notified. Regional security engaged. Kimberly's voice still carried through the phone. Karen lurched forward, her face twisting with panic. Behind her, her computer monitor flickered, then went black. Access gone. "This is unlawful," she cried. "No hearing, no notice, no investigation." Michael's gaze cut straight through her. "You started the investigation the moment you profiled me. You held the trial when you mocked me over a microphone. You delivered the verdict when you ordered me thrown out of a bank I own. You simply didn't realize I was the one watching." Charles said nothing. His shoulders hunched, his head bowed like a schoolboy caught in a lie. Nancy, still clutching the drawer like it held treasure, finally gave in. Her hands shook as she slid the key in, opened it, and placed Michael's card back on the counter. No words, no apology, only silence thick with shame. Michael didn't look at her. His attention turned to Sandra, standing rooted to the spot, tears shimmering at the corners of her eyes. "Sandra," Michael said, his voice carrying with deliberate clarity. "Effective immediately, you're being promoted. Corporate services will follow up. Your courage and your humanity have not gone unnoticed." The crowd gasped as if a wave of wind had swept the room. Ashley whispered, "Yes," under her breath, while Anthony's camera caught every second. Sandra blinked in shock. "Sir, I never wanted recognition. I spoke up because it was right." Michael gave her a small, solemn nod. "And that's why you deserve it." A new standard. He turned back toward the lobby. His words weren't shouted. They didn't need to be. Each one landed with the weight of stone. This moment is the line in the sand. From this day forward, Apex Bank will not tolerate discrimination of any kind. No ignoring complaints, no dismissing small incidents, no shielding each other. If you deny service based on appearance, if you profile, if you cover up bias, you will be removed. No retraining seminars, no probation. Removed. If you can't see every customer as equal, then you have no place here. The atmosphere shifted. Outrage gave way to awe. He wasn't just furious anymore, he was rebuilding something new, right there in front of them. Karen, desperate, clung to the scraps of her authority. "You'll destroy this branch. You'll lose half your team." Michael turned, his eyes hard. Better to lose staff than lose the soul of the institution. The deeper truth, and then the unexpected twist. Charles stepped forward again, still trembling, but not from fear this time. From release. His voice wavered. "Mr. Tate, I need to say something. On the record." The room hushed. Michael gave a single nod. "Speak." Charles swallowed hard, his words catching before tumbling out. "Karen told us not to serve certain customers. She never used the word profiling, but that's what it was. She'd say, make them wait, see if they're serious. If they don't look the part, they don't bank right. She told us to flag accounts for review if someone didn't dress like the investors she approved of." Gasps echoed around the lobby. Ashley pressed a hand over her mouth. "You had an actual system for this?" Anthony's voice shook as he addressed the stream. "This goes beyond a single morning. This was company policy, in practice, if not on paper." Karen spun toward Charles, her face red with fury. "Coward! You agreed with me. You said the same things." Charles nodded, shame carving lines into his face. "I did, and I regret every word. But I won't cover for you anymore. You made it doctrine." For a moment, Michael didn't react. He let the confession hang in the air, heavy as a verdict. Customers began murmuring. One woman muttered, "That explains why they lost my check for 3 days." Another nodded, eyes narrowing. "And why they made my husband wait hours for a loan officer." Finally, Michael spoke, his words slow and deliberate. "Thank you, Charles. Your confession doesn't erase your choices, but it shines light on what was hidden. That's worth something." Charles's eyes dropped again. guilt pressing him down. Karen looked like she might scream, or collapse, or both, but instead she staggered toward the back exit, only to find it locked. Her badge no longer worked. None of theirs did. Nancy stood nearby, pale and speechless. The building itself had rejected them. They were no longer Apex. And then Kimberly's voice returned. "Michael, update from PR," Kimberly's voice came through, crisp and measured. "Ashley's video has passed 200,000 views in under 20 minutes. Local papers are covering it, and equity watchdog groups have picked it up. The story's everywhere." Michael nodded once, calm as stone. "Good. Let them watch. Let them see what accountability looks like in real time." He turned back to the lobby, the customers still on edge, the staff frozen at their terminals. His words carried the weight of judgment. This is bigger than Apex Bank. This is a message to every institution that thinks silence protects power, that humiliating someone because of their skin, their clothes, or their neighborhood is just business as usual. That era ends now. He walked to the counter, picked up the card Nancy had returned, and slid it into his wallet. He didn't ask for his transfer. He didn't reclaim the million. He didn't need to. The act itself had already rewritten the story of the branch. His presence had shifted it from a place of arrogance to a place of reckoning. "We will rebuild," he said, his tone heavy with certainty. But not on the same rotten foundation. That foundation cracked wide open today. Almost casually, as if adding a footnote, he continued. "Effective immediately, Nancy is barred from any future position at Apex or its partners. Her record will carry this incident permanently." Nancy flinched as if struck. You can't do that," she whispered. Michael's eyes met hers. "I already have." The balance of power in the room shifted again, irreversible now. Operational lockdown. The applause that had burst when Michael fired the staff had quieted to an expectant hush, the kind of silence before a verdict is read. "Effective immediately," Michael said, deliberate and precise. "This branch is under lockdown. No transactions. All appointments canceled. Today, the only business conducted here is justice." Behind him, Kimberly's voice confirmed. "Operations suspended. System access limited to CEO authority only. Reform protocols deployed to the Seattle branch." A second voice entered the line. Donald, Apex board member. "Michael, the media is live. PR response is authorized. You're clear to initiate structural reform." If Michael felt pressure, he didn't show it. His voice had grown calmer with each escalation. "This isn't about firing a handful of people," he said, turning toward the staff who still hadn't moved. "This is about integrity. If the culture is poisoned, we don't prune the branches. We rebuild the soil. Starting now." He looked to Sandra. "You'll work directly with corporate compliance. I want every bias complaint since 2020 reviewed. None of them stay buried." Sandra nodded slowly, shock still in her eyes, but her posture steady. "I'll handle it." Murmurs of approval rippled through the customers, some whispering, others filming, documenting every word. Another confession. The sense of resolution lasted only a moment before another voice cracked the silence. From the teller line, a young employee, barely 23, raised a trembling hand. "Sir," he said cautiously, "there's something else you should know." Michael turned, his gaze firm but open. "Speak." The teller glanced around nervously, then back to Michael. Last fall, Karen introduced what she called selective screening. It wasn't written anywhere, but we all knew what it meant. Certain customers were marked for extra scrutiny. The air thickened. Even Anthony lowered his phone, his eyes wide. The teller pressed on. There were at least 3 written complaints. One from a black business owner who said he was treated like a suspect when he tried to deposit revenue. 2 others, Latino and Filipino customers, said they were stalled for hours. Karen told us to delay them. Later, Charles was told to pull their names from the follow-up queue so nothing would happen. The room erupted in gasps. Michael's eyes swung sharply toward Charles. "Is this true?" Charles's face drained. For a moment he hesitated, then lowered his head. It's true, he admitted. His voice was barely audible. We didn't file the complaints. We destroyed them. The crowd broke into whispers of shock. You shredded discrimination complaints, Michael said, his voice no louder than before, but cold now, like steel wrapped in velvet. On whose authority? Charles's lips parted, and the words fell out like a confession. Karen's. Always Karen's orders, Ashley muttered bitterly. This wasn't bias in the shadows, Anthony added. This was a cover-up. Civil rights violated, dressed up in business attire. Michael straightened, his voice calm but resolute. Kimberly, pull complaint records from every branch for the past 2 years. Cross-check them with staffing logs and overrides. If there's a pattern, uncover it. Already underway, Kimberly replied without hesitation. Compliance has escalated. A heavy stillness spread across the room, but this time it wasn't contained by marble and glass. Dozens of phones lifted skyward, live streams running across the internet. Not for likes, not for clout, but as evidence. Proof. Justice in real time. Michael scanned the faces in the crowd. Black, white, brown, young students, retirees, mothers with purses still clutched. Each one recognizing something of themselves in what had just happened. This was never about withdrawing $1 million, Michael said, his voice quieter now, yet heavier. It was about something more valuable. Fairness, dignity, accountability. Turning to Donald on the line, Michael continued, This isn't just firings anymore. We rebuild from the inside. Mandatory equity teams, independent complaint reviews, an anonymous fund for whistleblowers. No grievance buried, ever. You have the board's unanimous support, Donald replied. Bias isn't just immoral, it's bad business. Michael gave a single nod. Then let's begin again. A new foundation. 3 days later, the video had crossed 9 million views. Every major outlet ran it. Headlines screamed, CEO profiled in his own bank, and justice in real time. But Michael refused the spotlight. No talk show circuit, no viral speeches, no performative posts. He returned to his desk and set to work. By week's end, 5 additional Apex branches were under internal audit. More than 20 employees were dismissed, not as scapegoats, but through a deliberate, evidence-backed purge of corruption. Michael never called it revenge. He called it realignment. And at the center of this new culture stood Sandra. No longer just the teller who had spoken out, she became the face of Apex's Equity Integrity Team, a rotating council of frontline staff empowered to monitor, report, and correct bias from the ground up. She stood when it cost her something, Michael told reporters at his first press conference 2 weeks later. That's the culture we're building. Courage, even when silence feels safer. Backlash. Not everyone cheered. Critics lined the streets outside Apex headquarters. Some claimed Michael had acted rashly, others accused him of weaponizing race to consolidate power. But the evidence was overwhelming. The stories undeniable. The reforms tangible. Michael didn't argue. He let the policies speak louder than rhetoric. And in doing so, he delivered not just a headline, but a model. A roadmap for how institutions could cleanse themselves without waiting for lawsuits or protests to force their hand. The deeper rot. And yet, beneath the applause, beneath the headlines, beneath even the reforms, a darker truth surfaced. 3 weeks later, Kimberly received an anonymous envelope. A retired regional manager had written in. The revelation was chilling. Karen's behavior had been reported before, more than once, and yet nothing was done. Why? Because she kept the branch stable. Minority clients, often discouraged, delayed, or humiliated, rarely asked for loans. They deposited quietly, they complained less, they kept numbers low risk. And because she suppressed high-contact accounts, the very ones who demanded attention, her branch looked clean on the spreadsheets. No one wanted to rock the boat, so they let it slide. For years, it wasn't just one manager. It was a culture of complicity, a system that hid its prejudice behind balance sheets and polite denials. Not racism shouted from rooftops, but racism whispered through policy, buried beneath quarterly reports. Michael shut his office door, reread the anonymous email, and then picked up the phone. "Kimberly," he said, steady as ever. "This can't just be internal. We're going national. Launch the Diversity Access Index. From now on, every Apex branch will be judged not only by profit margins, but by one metric: trust." For a moment, silence hummed on the other end of the line. Then Kimberly replied, "That will change everything." "That's the point," Michael said. 3 months later, the changes began to ripple outward. Not loud, not flashy, but undeniable. Branches across the country opened their doors for listening forums where community members spoke, and employees took notes instead of making excuses. Teller training was torn down and rebuilt from the ground up. Each region received its own equity officer, empowered to intervene when complaints surfaced. Quietly, Michael funded a scholarship program for first-generation students in finance, targeting those from neighborhoods long shut out of opportunity. And through it all, he stayed the same. Not a celebrity CEO chasing headlines, but a man determined to clean his own house. Starting with the same polished lobby floor where he had once been shoved in front of strangers. Fifth Avenue Branch. What became of that Seattle branch on Fifth? It didn't shutter. It was reborn. New leadership, new staff. The teller counters were restructured into open stations, and on one wall hung a mosaic of customer testimonies. Stories of being heard, respected, treated fairly. At the center of it all, beneath soft lights, a plaque was mounted. This branch changed not because it was forced to, but because one man reminded us all: silence has a cost. A question for you. If you've followed this story to the end, I'll leave you with just one question. Not for comments, not for applause, but for reflection. Have you ever been made to feel like you didn't belong, only to later realize that you were the one holding the key all along? If yes, then this story was written for you. And if not, then remember this. True leadership has nothing to do with titles or volume. It's not about being the loudest voice in the room. It's about refusing to lower your standards when the world tries to lower you. Michael didn't lead with anger, he led with presence. So the next time someone underestimates you, let them. And then remind them, quietly but unmistakably, who signs the check.